do that this year.
Woo! You are looking live at the GovCast from Texas, all the way at Lincoln Road.
From Florida.
No longer on the East Coast. We're expanding worldwide. Our millions and millions of the fans worldwide. We're no longer confined to Florida. Florida schmarta. I went to where the frost was happening. I went to see. I was like, is there frost? Why are their electric bills $10,000? I'm searching out the scene. So
is Texas super shut down right now or no?
No, all good. Like, it's actually super scary. So I'm still masked from Florida. You come here. I don't know if you've seen like on the news. They're like, how is Texas not spiking? If you follow Fauci, but no, they're all, the land of the free, home of the brave, Texas. We don't fear anybody.
Guns will protect me from COVID.
Oh Lord, we went out to eat twice in restaurants. They're like, their tables next to us were packed, and you're like, you know what I mean? But no fear in Texas. They're all. Do your thing. So
have you gotten your second vaccine yet or no?
I'm waiting to get blood clot. Nothing better than waking up yesterday going, J&J is causing blood clot.
Oh, I forgot you did that one.
Yeah. So that's how I woke up yesterday. And then you look at your family, you're like, if I start to keel over, So I'm J&J. So I'm one and done. What are you guys? Are you done? Are you both done?
I'm not gonna get it.
I got my first one Monday.
There you go. Yeah, the ladies, listen, when I got my shot, I asked the lady nurse, been there a while, doing all Florida. I said, what would you do if you had, child rearing, its daughter, blah, 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 because my daughter-in-law is not going to get it either. She's like, I don't know. So real thing. So go get vaccinated, especially if you're not a woman in child rearing years. But other than that, they hand you, by the way, just a quick sidebar, they hand you a piece of paper when you're done. Those of you who haven't done it, it does make you feel weird because it goes, this is not FDA approved, The only reason you're getting it is because of an executive order, so it makes you feel funky. But I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Yesterday, when I got the thing on my phone, I'm like, oh, not good. So just keep it moving.
You'll be okay.
Limited cases. You'll be all right.
We'll see. Yeah,
we need guinea pigs like you for the rest of us to get it.
We'll see. They said it was, I think, 6 women, so hopefully I'm on the wrong gender, but who knows? But good luck. Stay safe. I am live, Lake Conroe, which is just north of Houston. There's nothing in Houston, so we went north of Houston. Recovering, I was out last week. I actually ran the David Goggins 4x4 by 48 all last weekend, which was crazy. 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 miles. That was crazy. Cost me a couple toes, but I made it through. And then I got in a car and drove to Texas. So that's my last 10 days.
You could have left the last part out.
What's that? Yeah, that's sorry. It's a little TMI. Sorry about that. But
I was following your journey on Facebook because you would post or your wife would post, and I'm like, oh, here it is. I'd wake up in the morning. I'm like, oh, 4 hours ago, here we are.
The best are late
on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, the best is late at night when it's like, because you run at midnight at 4 a.m. There's not a soul around. So I was standing in the middle of the street and did a wraparound video because there's not a soul in Satellite Beach. There's not a soul around. So, super fun. That was interesting, though. Good. It was all good. But I made it through. Back live. The team's all together. Today, we're super blessed. We have John Barrows from JB Sales Training. He's going to be here with us in just a minute. Expert in the sales world. So probably one of the best hours we'll ever have on this GovCast. So if you know somebody that works in sales, their career's in sales, encourage them to come join the show. John's firm works with Google, Salesforce, Slack. I mean, the best of the best companies in the entire country. He has a great story. So he'll be headlining the show today. So before I get to that, anything else, Stevie B, you want to introduce?
Yeah. I was going to tell you a runner story too. So I go for a jog every morning, not at 4 a.m. though. That's a little bit nuts for me. That's Goggins style. Normally around like 7 o'clock. So I go out and run. And I've been seeing these guys on my back street pushing carts, and it says adopt the spot. And I've seen them probably for like the past couple months. And finally today I was like, hey, what are you guys doing out here? And what they do, they're part of an organization called Litter Hikers of America. So it is someone that just walks around and picks up trash on the road. And that's what they do. And they're like retirees. And they're like, it's great because we get out and we get exercise. We make money. And we just walk and we're helping the environment. We're picking up trash. I'm like, that's amazing. I'm like, I love to help you out.
What's it called again?
Litter Hikers of America.
All across the country or just in a little
Well, they just started here in Boynton, like where I'm at. So it's going to be like this big movement where I'm hoping that they gain traction. So
were you inspired? Will you be doing it too?
Yeah, I told him, I was like, on the weekends, because they do it for like a long time. You need like hours of your time, but I got to work, unfortunately. I'm not retiree yet.
Yeah.
So,
did you get your trash bags? This weekend you're out picking up litter, cleaning up Boynton Beach.
Yeah, I got his information. I said, I'll follow you, and we'll definitely hook up. So,
to Steve's credit for the audience, he is an environmentalist out in nature doing his thing. So Steve you will drive down the highway, be like, oh, I see Steve and Brian over there.
So like, what is he doing? You know, what do they call that? When you see people in orange jumpsuits on the side?
Those are called prisoners.
Those are
prisoners. I don't think it's volunteer organization. These are called prisoners, Steve. Steve, we'll talk about that offline. Orange jumpsuits.
Prisoners. On to the next, Dre. How you doing?
Dre.
Am I supposed to talk about running?
I don't know. No. Can we talk about prisoners or running or Texas?
Running, sure.
You're a workout fan.
Yeah. I like to work out, but yesterday I actually missed my workout in the morning. I slept in, so I did go for a run at lunch, but only 1 mile. And then I got bored. I came back and like made up my own little workout in the gym. I don't love running. I personally kind of tune out. I'd like to just go to a gym. Somebody tell me this is what you do for an hour, and then that's it. And then I don't think about it. Yeah.
No, I get it. I just clears my head. I love to just clear my head. But I'm suffering looking Texas because it's an hour behind. So when I'm normally up an hour early, done, showered, and go. Man, I get up. By the time I do anything, it's already like 9 o'clock East Coast time. You're like, oh, I'm already behind. Or 8 o'clock. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, so I'm all jammed up here in Texas. I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
You come back this weekend, right?
Yeah, I'm driving back this weekend. So next week in home, I'll be exhausted back and forth. So all good, all good. Anything else? We're all good. We all caught up. Everybody. It's been a while since we all been together.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while. Yeah, it's been on one.
Let's do it. Alan Barrows, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. Founder, CEO of JB Sales Training. Amazing. Thanks, bro. Thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. Up in the Boston area. So for maybe the 2 people in the entire country that don't know who you are and what you do, why don't you tell the folks what you're blowing up there?
Yeah, sure. I run JB Sales over here. We do sales training, super tactical stuff around prospecting, negotiations, and we work with some of the fast growing tech companies out there like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, Slack, Google, all them, and just working with their teams, trying to get a little bit better every day and having fun doing it. So I'm looking forward to having a conversation with y'all.
That's awesome. So yeah, for our audience, if you have any questions, put them in below. We'll get them to John during the show. And then again, if you know folks, we'll try not to talk about the government at all. Although when John started his career, he said, I think he went Black & Decker, then Xerox. You sold to the government for like 38 seconds, right?
No, that was for a year and a half. That was where I got DeWalt was my first job out of college because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I thought driving around in construction in DeWalt, big Dodge Ram pickup trucks, giving away free tools to construction workers was pretty cool. But then I went to sell copiers and that's where I learned how to sell. The 8-week sales training program, solution selling, founders, all that stuff. And man, if you're talking about selling a commodity, go sell copiers. And so not only copiers, the government. Yeah. Right, so I couldn't negotiate on contract. My price was my price. So it was I couldn't even work the deal or anything like that. It was like, nope, that's the price. So why the hell should I buy yours that's 30% higher than everybody else's? I don't know, because you like me.
See, John had a full head of hair when he started that deal. He had a full head of hair when he started Xerox government, and then now you see. So that's what.
That's your requirement to be on the show. You can't have hair.
That's right. I was just going to say that anybody that sold or touched the government, hairless. And he'll know.
Yeah, it's great during COVID times. I'll tell you right now. All my friends who had to go out and get haircuts, I laughed at them because they all had to butcher their own hair. I'm sitting there shaving mine nice and fine. So
every time I go, mine's easy, 0-1, done. 10 minutes in and out. Yep. And I live near a military base now, so all those barbers are perfect. It's like $5. They're like, we do this for free. This is private. Yeah. So. Hey, can you talk about? I know you mentioned a couple of things in your intro, which are amazing. Can you share with the audience how does that happen? How do you get clients like that? I mean, your client list is amazing, and so I don't want you to divulge any of your super secret stuff.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about, man.
How do you start working with Google? How does that process work with a Salesforce, Slack at all? It's amazing.
I hate to say it, but it's about using our stuff. I'd say we cover all aspects of the sales process, but the heavy piece that we have is prospecting. And so I took this training. My brief background, I graduated marketing degree, went to DeWalt,
Hold on. Marketing degree from where?
Maryland.
There it is. There it is. It's
Yeah.
Maryland connection.
Go Terps, worst mascot out there, but fun school to be at.
There you go.
I like it.
There you go.
Why is that the worst mascot? It looks like a cool mascot.
Fear the turtle. Who the hell is scared of a turtle? Like, honestly, it's like it's the slowest, dumbest. I mean, don't get me wrong, turtles are kind of cool, but no. Anyways,
tough shell on the outside, soft.
Rugged show. Sorry.
Well, I like the tortoise hair, scenario there because patience wins. I believe in patience in your career. So, but I did that, and then I went to Xerox, and then after that, I did a startup with a couple of buddies of mine from high school, and I was 25, so I had no idea what I was doing. So I took every training I could. I took Sandler, Miller, Hyman, Taz, Spin, all of it, and I came across this one group called Basho, and it was the first training that I really liked because big theory about selling or this process I had to follow. It was like, hey, here's how to send an email. And I used the techniques at my company to help us be the fastest growing company in Massachusetts, and then we sold off to Staples. And I got fired from Staples because I do not belong in corporate America. And so I joined Basho, that group. And during that time, we used the techniques to get into Salesforce and in some really real like semantic. Their client list was insane. And then to make a very long story short, they screwed it up and I took it over. So the new 2007 hit, new CEO came in, tanked the company, fired us all on the spot one day. And then I scooped up the training and said, hey, can I go off and do this my own and resell? And they was, yep, no problem. So I've been using this stuff along the way, and it does help when you get that one or two marquee clients early. Yeah. That I knew when I was going off on my own that, especially for my own, right? And I tell this to entrepreneurs all the time, like find that one kick-ass client that you over service, like in the beginning, right? Just find one kick-ass client with a logo and over service the shit out of them, give them whatever discount, but get in return the testimonial, the case study, those type of things. And I knew for a fact if I got Salesforce, because I got Salesforce about 10 years ago. So they were Salesforce, but they weren't Salesforce, right? And I just knew that if I got them as a client, the rest of my life would be a hell of a lot easier because I could surf it. I could play in the SaaS world, and everybody wanted to be like Salesforce. So that's kind of what launched the whole thing.
So listen, we say that to folks all the time. It's part of Steven's curriculum in GSU.
Chapter 4, man, flagship formula.
Go get a flagship agency they want to hear it from them more than we always talk about. Go in the government world, go get a flagship agency. Yep. Service the crap out of them, even if you have to give it away for free. They will tell all the other agencies way better than anything you could ever say.
Word of mouth. I mean, I could say at least the amount of clients that I bring in versus my team and everything. I'd say at least 50% of my clients are ex-Salesforce people who went someplace else.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean? And start and say, hey, John, I took your training 3 years ago over at Salesforce. Now I'm at this company. I'm a VP of sales. Let's talk, right?
So, folks, it's a marathon, right? Folks are so short term. Like, what am I getting next week? You're like, listen, it's a marathon, especially folks that are young or their companies are young. It's a marathon. Like, invest.
You get a 60-year career. You know what I mean? These days, like, why? I don't understand why. I'm a Gary Vee fan, right? He talks about be patient but quick, right? Like, be patient with your career but quick with decisions, and I'm a big fan of that. So,
can you talk about your firm, that model that you just referenced, like maybe some of the major pieces of it, so folks can relate to it, and kind of how it maybe differentiates from some of the other trainings you mentioned out there? We all know there's 50 different platforms. Like, hey, what's unique or special about it? That you love?
I mean, I think that, there's a million different ways to cut whatever cake you want to get into when it comes to sales training. It's all about fit, right? Ours, I mean, I guess if you were to macro it out and differentiate, it's much more tactical than anything else I've taken, right? A lot of the other trainings I've taken were very theory oriented or, like sounded really good in the role play. But when you actually tried it with a client, you got kicked in the teeth. Where a lot of what attracted me to this training was, when I was in the class, like we were prospecting, right? And that's the heavy focus. And they would be like, all right, well, pick an account y'all want to get into, like pick a tier 1 account you want to get into, open up your laptops, do this, right? Do this research, fire off an email to the CEO and see what happens. So in class, we were doing not role play, which look, I think role play has its place, but I think most role play sucks because it's either like the perfect scenario that never ever happens or some insanely ridiculous thing that would never happen either. And our life is right here in the middle. I'm all about live application. Like what are you working on right now that we can apply this to? And so that's kind of, I've taken that through it. So now when we do our training, it's all like we teach a concept, then we apply it to their real world situation and we see how it flows.
That's awesome.
I had a question. So I lead one of the sales teams here at GovSpend. So before this, I was like, hey, we've got a great guest. Give me all your questions. Like, what are all the things that you would love to ask him that you may not have a chance to? So I'm going to ask you probably 100 questions if that's okay. But I'll start with just one. So I saw too on your website, you talk about cold emails. So for our team, right, they're constantly doing cold calls. They're doing cold emails. Can you talk about any like best tricks or maybe like best practices for both cold calls and cold emails?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I got a whole program around it. So
that was our one question for the show.
Yeah. So I could go on. No, but I think the challenge right now is emails and calls are struggling quite a bit. Not only because, I mean, there's some data, HubSpot tracks this a lot, where once COVID hit, they track like the volume of emails and then the response rates. And the graph is crazy. It's like the volume of emails went like this and the response rates went like that. Yep. Not only just the response rates, but now the deliverability rates are brutal. So now we are seeing like the platforms, Google to Google, Outlook to or Exchange to Exchange, they're learning. And if you start to throttle up and use a lot of these cadence tools like SalesLoft and Outreach, which I'm a fan of if you used correctly, if you start throttling that up, then you're going to get throttled back as far as your delivery rates are concerned. So now it's not just, hey, did somebody respond to my email? Now it's just, did somebody even get my email? Same thing with phone. Like when COVID hit, phone pretty much died, like absolutely died, because everybody went home and nobody had their phone forwarded to their cell phone or anything like that. Phone's coming back, and I heard you guys talking about like regions, right? Texas and Texas is wide open. So I'm betting phone is actually is coming back a decent amount in Texas because people are back in the office. Where I'm up here in Massachusetts and we're still kind of ratcheted back a little bit. So it's probably not as effective here in Massachusetts. So I can get into some super tactical things, Andrea, but holistically, to back up a little bit, it's not about one or the other anymore. It's about the context. It's about the story that we tell these people. So it's email, social, video, whatever. Send it in the mail at this point, for crying out loud. We're working with companies like Sendoso and Alice and that type of stuff to send stuff to people too. So it's about, I believe right now that sales reps need to become much more like marketers. They need to be their own marketing engine and lay the groundwork so that when they make the phone call, when they send the email, there's a little bit of familiarity with it. And so now I'm a little bit more open to getting back to you or responding to you. But to get direct to your question, some tactics on emails, look, you got to keep it less than a scroll or two, because if it's more than that, nobody pays attention. You got to figure out a subject line that fits within 3 to 4 words, because that's the highest open rates based on data. I kind of go by the old school, let's go let Glenn Ross. By the way, I tell people, if you haven't seen that movie, don't watch the movie. It's a depressing ass movie. But that's the best statement next to Alec Baldwin's entire career, right? And in there, he talks about ABC, always be closing, but he also talks AIDA, right? Attention, interest, desire, action. And I thought he made that up, but I looked it up, and that is the fundamental process of sales. So 1898, guy by the name of St. Elmo Lewis came up with this. These are the 4 mental stages we all need to go through before we buy something. First, something needs to get our attention. Then we have to be interested. Then we have to have a desire. Then we have to move to act. So if we take that and we apply it to emails, the subject line gets my attention. So I got to put something in the subject line that's going to get my attention. And I used to think the subject line was probably one of the most important things. But now, because of, you can read the first few lines of the email. Yeah. So now those first... Yeah, and those first few lines are just as important now as the subject line. And so interest, right? Attention, interest. That first sentence has to be interesting to me. And what am I interested in? Me. Like, I don't give a shit about anything. You know what I mean? Like, our clients don't care about how great we are. So like starting your email off with, I'd like to introduce myself. I don't care who you are, right? We're the leading provider of. No, you're not. Recent surveys say, shut up. So you got to start with them. And so you either do this by research. Hey, Andrea, I was on your website and I saw some cool stuff, whatever. Or you can ask a question. Hey, Andrea, how are you keeping your reps motivated and engaged now that everybody's working from home? And if I can have that question be relevant to you, then and pique your interest, well, then you're going to open up my email, and then desire, there's my value proposition. Like what's the value there? And then call to action. So if you follow that flow right there on emails, it's a pretty good formula to kind of plug and play the different pieces. The key here, though, is figuring out relevance and personalization. Right? There's a whole debate out there, right? Oh, everybody personalize. Hold on. You don't have to personalize, because if you personalize without it being relevant, you actually do more harm than good.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Jack, going back to you, Maryland, right? Just because you know I went to University of Maryland does not buy you any points these days. You know what I mean? I was blackout drunk for 4 straight years going at U Maryland. I don't remember it. I'm a 45-year-old man right now, for crying out loud. I don't remember shit about college. So, like, if you're like, hey, John, I see you went to University of Maryland, then you hard cut to some piece of crap elevator pitch that has nothing to do with what I'm interested in, you actually lose points.
But that's what most people do, right? They find one little thing, and they go right to sell, and you're like, God, it's a marathon. It's a marathon. Yep. Relax. Just relax.
Yeah, well, I think we're getting pushed a lot with the VC world and the driving for results and go. Like, these poor kids are being told to still make 50 dials a day, 100 dials a day, which is, everybody knows now quality is the answer over quality or quantity, but everybody's still measuring on quantity over quality. So it's kind of this weird transition phase that we're in, I think, right now.
I think two of the questions that came in they would pop one, like, hey, what are folks that call out or they call office lines? Like, if they're in the call, the phone centric process of it, what would be your best tip? I love the market constantly, build your brand. Like, we push our team, like, the more people go research you, because they do, and you have a following or you are on social media, you're more valid, whether you like it or not. You're more valid, right? And so some folks don't want to do that. But what folks that are on the phone, reaching out still, or focused on the phone, any tip you would use mostly for them to get in faster, better, picked up more?
Yep. Same type of structure there. We call it the winning call formula here, where it's like you got to think about your intro, right? You break it down into intro, the reason for your call, the call to action, and then we can talk about voicemails. But that intro, you got to hit somebody hard. There's weak and powerful introductions. Calling you up, which I used to do for 10 straight years. I used to call up and say, hey, Jack, how's it going? This is John Barrows of Thrive Networks. How you doing today? Like, that would be my intro. And nobody cares how I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, I realized I was so bad at that. Like, hey, how you doing today? Like, I wouldn't even wait for the response. I'd be like, hey, how you doing today? I was wondering if you could point me in the right direction. Or like the horrid, and if anybody really is listening to this, please, if there's anything you get out of this conversation here, please never say these two fucking phrases ever again in your lives, which is touching base and checking in. They're the two most meaningless phrases in sales. It means there's no reason for your call, so there's no reason for me to talk to you. Yeah. So there's your nugget right there. Start every single phone call with this phrase to remove touching base and checking in. The reason for my call is. Because if you can't finish that sentence, you shouldn't be making a phone call. So if you break it down, right? So when you pick up the phone, Jack, especially if it's direct dial or even cell phone numbers now, because people are getting cell phone numbers, but people are still getting pissed off when they get an unsolicited call on their cell phone. You got to respect that. So what I'll usually do is, hey, Jack, I know you weren't expecting my call, but can I get 30 seconds of your time to tell you why I'm calling?
Amen.
So I just asked for a little bit of permission. I don't even introduce myself first, by the way. I don't even say, hi, this is John Barrows, because that's an immediate see you later. But if I say, Jack, I know you weren't expecting this call, but, and I put but there to remove that negative, right? Everything before but gets ignored. So you say, I know you weren't expecting my call, but can I get 30 seconds to tell you exactly why I'm calling? I don't do the 27 seconds or 6. I think that's kind of cheesy, but I do quantify what I'm asking for. Sometimes I'll say, can I get a few moments of your time just to tell you why I'm calling? Fine. I usually get fine. Who is this? What do you want?
Yeah.
Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to sell the next step. You're not trying to sell your solutions when you're cold calling or prospecting. You're just trying to sell the next step. So my intro is just trying to sell another 30 seconds for you to pay attention to me. And in that's trying to sell you on another minute or two that we can have this conversation. And then I'm trying to sell you on the meeting. Amen. So it goes like this. Hey, Jack, I know you weren't expecting my call here, so I'll be real brief. But do you have 30 seconds to have this brief, let you know why I'm calling? Sure. Why? Well, this is John with JB Sales. And look, the reason I'm calling is we're working with a lot of other sales leaders like you who are having a hard time keeping their reps motivated and engaged. Now everybody's working from home. And they're using our training to do it. And I was just wondering if that's worth a few more minutes of your time to see if, we could help out with what you're doing.
Yep.
Right. And if not, hang up on me right now. Right. And then they'll say, all right. And they'll either go, Okay, let's talk a little bit more, right? And I'll say, hey, I just wanted to see what's the best way to get like 10 to 15 minutes on your calendar to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like you could say tomorrow at 3:00 at this point, and I am off the phone with you. But usually I get, all right, well, fine. What do you want to talk about? And that's where I go into, look, I got like, and then I quantify. Then I'm like, look, I got like 5 quick questions for you just to understand your situation. After that, I'll tell you the parts of our solution that I think might help. And from there, you can tell me whether it makes sense to take the next steps or not. Right. So it's a little bit of the Sandler upfront contract stuff. Right. Yeah. And then they say, all right, fine. So question. Cool. Value proposition, close. And this is one more piece to that. This is why I think it's so important. The big mistake that I see most reps doing with cold calls when they run a cold call blitz or whatever, they just grab their list and they call anybody and everybody who's on that list. And I don't know about y'all, I am not bright enough to call a CIO in the healthcare industry, a director of IT in the manufacturing industry, a VP of sales and, retail, and have a relevant, good conversation with each of them. Like, I'm just not that bright, right? So, but if I call every VP of sales in the SaaS industry and I have a message, some questions, and even a story to tell, when you say go, I have a chance of being relevant in that conversation. Otherwise, I got to be generic. Otherwise, I got to say dumb shit like, tell me about your priorities and, like that type of crap, which, never really gets you too far.
Listen, I love that when we hire folks, we do, because that old school thing of don't let them say no early.
No, you want him to say no. I don't. Sorry, do you follow Chris Voss at all? Chris Voss, so you hunt for the no.
Yeah.
The psychology is you want the no. That Getting to Yes book is full of shit. You want somebody to say no because now I feel more in control, and when I feel more in control, I'm actually more open to having this conversation.
Yep.
And same thing with qualification. I disqualify more than I qualify. I'm like, why do you need training? It doesn't seem like that's the and I try to get them to sell me on it.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
no, we need it, right? So.
I call that the takeaway, right? It's like, yeah, if you don't need it, it's great. Sales are great. All right, see you later. And then
you guys are selling.
Well, I don't know if you ever seen that. You watch Key and Peele? The comedian. You ever seen the cold call one where he's selling timeshares? Oh, you gotta watch it. You gotta go Google, go on YouTube and say Key and Peele timeshare. And it's exactly the walkaway. So I think Peele, I always forget, but Key's the bald-headed one and Peele's the stoner, right?
Yeah.
So Peele's like sitting there and he's like cold calling, and Key picks up and he's like, hey, I want to sell you timeshare, and Key's like, nah, I'm good. And he's like, okay. So he just hangs up on him. and Key's like, he goes back to cooking in the kitchen, and he's like, you could see it's bothering him, right? And he's like, so he kind of star 69, calls the guy back. He's like, did you call me and try to sell me a timeshare and then hang up? Well, yeah, you said you didn't want it. Well, yeah, but why didn't you? He's like, well, are you going to buy a timeshare? Well, no, but click, hangs up on him again, right? So he's like, what in the fuck? Right? And he calls him back, and eventually he ends up like, I want your premium package here. You don't think I can buy this shit? Right? So it's a good example of the walkaway close. And that's why I tell everybody why prospecting is so important. I don't care where you are in your career.
Amen.
Because there's we train negotiations. I train, objection handling and discounting and all this other stuff. But there is one solution to all of that, and it's a big fat pipeline. Because I want to put myself in a position where I want your business. I don't need it. Because when I want your business, I sell the right way. When I need your business, I do some shady shit. Right?
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, I want to kind of pivot because the calls and the emails, that's a fundamental. But even taking a step prior to that, it's about setting up the sales organization. So there's a lot of startups, like people that have lost their jobs during these times, are just saying, hey, I'm going to go try to make it on my own. Talking to a lot of companies and government, they're starting PPE companies, and that was booming in 2020. But a lot of people are just saying, hey, if I'm going to get laid off by my employer, why not just take the risk on myself? Yeah. And they're building their sales organization from the ground up. And I have a couple questions, but I'll stick with this one first. Is there any structure that you see being, one that works better? Like someone, say they hire a salesperson. Are they the appointment setter? Are they the demoer? Are they the closer? Do you have an SDR first and then set up the appointments? Do you have a variation of broker model where everyone plays to the strength? So I didn't know through your research, stuff sales, there's one that would be good for like a startup company with limited resources, of course, to have the best result.
Yeah. So, the answer is always going to be, it depends on what you're selling and who you're selling to, right? So if you're selling to enterprise or mid-market or SMB, how complex is your sale? All that stuff plays into this. But my belief here is that founders, I actually wrote a blog post on this a little while ago called The Founder's Dilemma, right? When they start in sales. Because what happens is a founder starts and they're usually, and even if they're an engineer, they say they're not in sales, okay? But they created this product or they have this resource or whatever it is, and they're passionate about it, right? So they go out there and they start talking to people about it. And usually when people start talking about it, I always say sales is a transfer of enthusiasm, right? Yeah. Like if you believe in what you sell, then that transfer of that enthusiasm is so strong. So what happens is they go out and they start talking to friends, families, and fools, right? So it's like they talk to their circle of people who are usually pretty open to listening to them. And because they are super passionate about what they are saying, usually the person on the other end is like, wow, that sounds super cool. Can I, I'll try that, or I'll whatever it is. And so all of a sudden they get some traction and they're like, oh, cool. Well, let me just hire everybody needs this shit now. Let me go hire some sales reps and let me just throw some fire on this thing and go.
Yeah.
And it fails miserably because those sales reps are never set up for success. They don't have the same passion that the founder does for what they do, right? And they're out there with a pitch deck trying to convince people, and it ends up being salesy because this was passion. The founder was passion and drive and need. This ends up being, I'm pitching you on something I don't really understand or care about or believe in. So first and foremost, I think the founder has to be the chief sales officer, period. They have to figure out and they have to pay attention to all aspects of the sales process and document as much as they possibly can. So how many, how did they get the meeting with how do they get their meetings? Was it through networking? Was it through cold calling? Was it through emails, right? What message resonated when they reached out to somebody? When they met with the person, what questions did they ask? What objections did they have? Who's the you know what I mean? And really overanalyze and over document what they are seeing out there so that they can then put other people into that equation that could be somewhat successful, right? And then the whole predictable revenue model, right? Like, so predictable revenue came out, 20 years ago. And, the book, good for them. He was there at the right time. So good for him. But I'm sorry, like people claim that they invented something, which is just horseshit. But anyways, like
he loves Aaron. He loves Aaron.
No, I like Aaron, but I just, like I wrote a book. I want to be in sales when I grow up. Did I teach kids how to, no, needless to say. But but that model, it works, but unfortunately, I think it's really good for organizations to scale. Let's put it that way. Because hiring one sales rep to do all aspects of the sales process is brutal because you have to prospect, you have to meet, you have to close, kind of the three buckets there. And nobody does that consistently well across the board, right? So what they tend to do is, hire a sales rep, give them a quota, go. But when you break down the predictable revenue, which fundamentally makes sense, you hire junior sales reps, you get them cold calling. They kind of grow and then they move to AEs, and then those AEs move on to further and further. The problem is that it's not a great experience from a sales, from a client standpoint. Nobody wants to be handed off 15 times before they actually talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about, right? So I think the founder, chief sales officer, then I think you can, if you don't know what you're talking about, you should hire somebody that has some sales chops, ideally in the industry, that can help you redefine that sales methodology approach before you start throwing more people at it. But another approach would be, if usually the founder is great at sitting in front of somebody and having a fantastic conversation and in transferring that enthusiasm, but they're really not good at prospecting. So you can hire a couple of kids to kind of give them a list and just do some social, do some networking, do some calling to get meetings for the founder. And then those people can grow into more closer roles, and you can't have that model. But I would just caution right now, I think we're moving back to full cycle sales. I really do think with account-based marketing and artificial intelligence and all that stuff out there, I think SDRs and BDRs are going to roll up under marketing and operations. And we're going to go back to full cycle inside sales, who run the whole sales cycle as SMB, mid-market, enterprise move up, but then all the account-based marketing stuff is going to be supporting them.
Yeah, I like that. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to go back to something you said right before Steven talked. You said big fat pipeline. And I feel like that's literally music to every salesperson's ears. Yep. So when it comes to your pipeline, what would you say? I don't know if you want to say 2 or 3, like some of the most important things that you think contribute to helping move your pipeline along and really making your solution or product a priority for the company.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this has to come down to the priorities of the business, right? Yeah. This kind of is the question I get a lot, which is, John, how do you create urgency, right? How do you get, first of all, A, how do you stand out, from the pack, and B, how do you create urgency? And first and foremost, I've done a lot of thinking on this one. I don't think you can, I don't think we as sales professionals can create urgency.
Yeah.
I think we can uncover it and we can drive it, but we can't create it, right? I mean, you can manufacture it with discounting and that type of stuff, but that's just sad. But how do you create it and how do you stand out? I wrote a post a while back called "Sell to the 20%," which is my fundamental belief. If you pick any product or service you own, pick any product or service, I promise you, I guarantee you only use 10 to 20% of the functionality, whatever that product or service is, right? I mean, your clothes, you wear them 10%, maybe your car. Now nobody's using it, but you drive it to the office, drive it home, your iPhone. I mean, this thing has more power than we use to send somebody to the moon, for crying out loud. Yet most people check their email, Snapchat, tweet, whatever. So because most people only use 10 to 20% of what they buy, that's how I believe people buy. They only buy, nobody cares about the whole slide deck. They literally don't. Right? Like they only care about if it's 30 slides, they probably care about 5 of them, right? That are most relevant. So what you do is that's why discovery is the most important part of the sales process, because the right discovery sets the stage for the rest of it and it allows you to hold accountable and all that other stuff. So it's digging into and coming in with some insights. So you're not just saying, tell me about your priorities, but you're saying, hey, you know what? We're typically working with VPs of sales right now in SaaS and moving into 2021 with COVID kind of settling in and whatever. We're seeing their top priorities are X, Y, and Z. Are those yours? Even if they're not, the fact that you show their world a little bit tends to open up the conversation a little bit. And they'll usually say yes and or no but. And once you start honing in on really why are they doing this, like you really go through. So forget about your demo, forget about your presentation. I haven't used a slide deck to present in years for sales. I do it for training, obviously, but I remember vividly at Thrive Networks. I remember the day I threw my slide deck away. And here's a tip for everybody listening to this. If you hear this word, because I used to think, somebody told me early on in my career, make sure the client speaks more than you, right? 2 ears, 1 mouth, blah, 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 right? So I would sit down, and when I was selling IT services, I would, 30 minutes, like it was an hour-long sales call. I would ask 35 minutes worth of questions, like literally 35 minutes worth of questions, just to make sure you talked longer than me. And at the end of those 35 minutes, it didn't matter what you said, by the way. As long as you had computers, you were getting my pitch. So 35 minutes in, I'd be like, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that insight. So anyways,
back to me. Right.
So we were founded in June of 2000 with 3 founders, 1 strategy, 1 finance, and 1 technical guy, which really puts us in a unique position as an IT services firm, because most IT services firms are formed by engineers, and they take a very and I would go on and on and on and on and on about every aspect of what I did.
Yeah.
And at the end, and this is where I threw it away, I vividly remember, if you ever hear this word at the end of one of your presentations or demos, you've done a miserable job, and it's the word digest. You know what, John? I'm going to need a little time to digest what you just told me right there. Why don't you circle back in a couple of weeks? We'll take it from there. Does that sound fair? If you hear that, stop and apologize to the person that you just wasted their time. Because it's our job to help them digest the information. If they walk out of the conversation more confused than they were walking in, we've done a terrible job. And I did that. And I remember walking out, and I was with an engineer, right? And I remember walking out of that meeting and going, and I was so proud of myself. I was like, ooh, I crushed that meeting. And these words came out of my mouth. I said, that dude didn't even know what to do with the information I put in front of him. And my engineer, non-sales guy, even he was like, huh? And as soon as that image is burned into like it literally, I was like, what? As soon as he looked at me like that, I was like, he didn't even know what to do with the info. Oh no. And that was the day that I threw my slide deck away. That was the day. And now it's about having a conversation, trying to find that one thing. And I go back to disqualifying more than I qualify. I try to find all the reasons why you shouldn't, right? Because you're going to find those out eventually. So Andrea, to your question of how do you accelerate, you go deep on discovery and split. Here's another thing for people to think about. Split up discovery and qualification. They're 2 different things, and everybody always combines the 2. Qualification is about me. I'm trying to qualify you to see if you fit in my world, BANT, MEDIC, whatever you want to use for that qualification criteria. Discovery is about you, figuring out why you should do this and what the impact of your business is. Here's one to dictate your forecast, Andrea, and this is for everybody else out there. We use this on our team, is you got to ask impact questions. You got to come to what's the impact of them doing this? And we all understand timeline, right? Well, when do you want to make this decision? When do you want to implement this? The question that everybody should ask right after that is, okay, you want this launched by June 1st? Okay. What happens if we don't launch on June 1st? Or what happens if you don't make this decision?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if there's not some meat on that bone,
Right.
don't forecast it.
Right.
Right. But if there is if we don't do this by June 1st, and it shouldn't be like, well, we're going to miss the discount or we'll just stay with our existing vendor. No, you have to find real business impact if you want your forecast to be accurate in any way, shape, or form.
Super true.
John, let me ask you about kind of some of the HR parts of sales folks, right?
This is not my HR is not my strength.
I want to be a millionaire tomorrow, right? How do I want my commission check? And so, any advice? How do folks stay locked in for the long term, right? When we hire folks, like they always get out strong, and then they return to the mean, and then they lose their way, they lose their why. And so I assume as you deal with sales forces, some of the best in the country, literally, like what do you see out there? How do folks stay engaged? How are companies, motivating or getting their folks motivated or put the carrot in front of them, whatever process that or selects them out, right? Hey, you're not meant to be in sales. You just got in the wrong door of this company. Let's move you over there. So what do you see? What are your thoughts in that construct?
Well, I'll kind of go macro than micro, but I think first and foremost, I get a lot of leadership who talk to me about motivating their team and that type of thing. And I just ask them, hey, when was the last time you actually painted a real vision and helped these reps understand how they fit into that vision? Yeah. Right. So, everybody has their vision statement up on the wall that nobody ever really pays attention to. But when was the last time the leader stood up and said, hey, 5 years out here, the goal of this company, we want to be here and we want to either go IPO, whatever it is, right? Whatever that goal is. And by the way, rep, here's how you fit into this. Because if I've always said that if you can't get people to buy, they're only going to do their job. You'll never get them to do more than their job if they don't believe that they are part of something bigger than themselves. So first and foremost, I think leadership has to paint that vision. Then you got to make sure that these reps believe in what they do, because sales is a brutal profession.
Yep.
If you do not fundamentally believe in what you do, then I don't think you can be successful in sales. Like the whole sell ice to an Eskimo. No, I think that's the cheesiest, douchiest sales rep out there who sells ice to an Eskimo, right? That's why I hate Glengarry Glen Ross. I hate Boiler Room. I hate Wolf of Wall Street. Those are the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. As far as sales, they're great movies. They're terrible sales movies. My favorite sales movie, Tommy Boy. Hands down the greatest sales movie you've ever seen. You know why? Because Tommy Boy believed, at his core, he believed he was just trying to do the right thing. He was a dipshit, but he was just trying to do his, he just was trying to figure it out along the way because he wanted to save his business. He wanted to save his family's, you know what I mean? So there was a belief there. So I think it's incumbent upon leadership onboarding. You don't give them product knowledge and dump it down their throat. You tell them, go talk to some customers. You tell them, go read the case studies. You sit down in front of the founder team and have the founders tell, why did we start this business? Where do we fit? Where do we make the biggest difference? So first and foremost, it's continuously reinforcing that. And then it's getting them to, there's the structure versus scripts conversation I always have, right? And it's a generational thing too here. I'm a Gen Xer, right? So when I was bored when I was a kid, my mom would just kick me out of the house and say, get out of the house, like go, just be home for dinner, right? And I'd go burn stuff down, I'd break things, whatever. And so we figured it out. But these kids these days, every minute of their life is structured. Every minute. Like they go to school to this hour, then they have soccer practice for 30 minutes, then they have their iPad for, then they have their friends, and then they this. And so every moment of their life has been structured. And then they get out into the real world and they see idiots like me being like, hey, figure it out. And they look at you sideways like, what are you talking about? Figure it out. Tell me what to do. Yeah. And the reaction for somebody like me is, okay, you don't know what to do? I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. Here's a script. And you give a kid who's taught to the test their entire lives these days, MCAS, all that crap, you give them a script, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to get creative, and then they'll get bored. Then they'll feel just like a robot. And you won't. Structure's the answer. I don't like being in structure. You put structure on me, I try to break it. I'm like, there's got to be some better way to do it, right? But I like building structure. These kids, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, like they thrive within structure, and they'll be better than we ever would be. And so I think it's providing a structure for them to play within that structure and constantly using them to test. Messaging, test questions, test all this other stuff, and have them own certain parts of it to come back with that insight to make adjustments that see improvements. If you can get somebody bought into the learning environment of this, that's one of the big things that I see organizations are missing out on. Especially in this newer generation coming in, if these kids are not constantly feel like they're being they're learning, then they bounce as fast as you can imagine, right? If they don't see any, like, I'm getting better here, I'm learning things, I'm allowed to have some creativity, you'll never get them to stay.
Yeah.
But if you get them to feel a part of it, they'll stay for a lot longer than people assume these days.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to touch upon that because you're talking about different generations, and I feel like the generations today, they hop from one company to the next, to the next, to the next,
Sure.
right? And maybe it is they don't believe in that bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
But as let's say a CEO or owner or VP, like someone that manages sales reps, say you are putting that vision forward, right? And you're sharing it with them, and you're investing a lot of time in the training aspect, and you make them a great top performer.
Sure.
And then they still leave, right? Like it's one of those things, like how do you, I guess, beyond the bigger picture, like keep them in there from the next shiny, brightest, latest, coolest thing that's out there in the streets?
If you do all that, if you invest in them, you show a vision, and that's it, then piss off. I don't give a shit. Go find somebody else to sell for. If I don't care, I don't care about my top. I mean, I care about my top performers.
Yeah.
But usually the top performers are these artists who are out there and doing their own thing, and they actually destroy the culture of the organization itself because they're like, oh, I don't have to show up to that meeting, I don't have to do my forecast, and so they represent this terrible model for somebody else. Now, if that person is creating a good model for everybody else, they're probably not going to leave because they feel like they're in those positions. So if I get a kid who's going to go look, I'm not going to try to hold you back. Okay. If you're one of my top performers, I'm going to over communicate with you. I'm going to help you set your goals. Like one of my guys on my team, Morgan, right? Like the kids, Morgan Ingram, he's all out there on social, he's killing it, right? And so I'm like, all right, for me, he's one of those people that it does have that itch to go off and do his own thing, does have that, like, probably is getting 1 million people to call him and say, hey, come over here and work with us type of stuff. So I sit down with him, I say, all right, Morgan, say you hit your numbers this year, outside of the commissions and all that other stuff, what else? Like, what else do you want personally? Yeah. And him and his new girlfriend, like they like to travel. So I said, Morgan, have you ever taken a $10,000 vacation? He's a 27-year-old kid. Like, so he's like, no. I go, well, if you hit your numbers, right, I'll throw $10,000 so you and her can take a vacation anywhere you want. And he's like, are you serious right now? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And so it's let him come up with those ideas, right?
And the inside.
Yeah, if you go ABC, right, the whole distribution of talent, Jack Welch thing, right? You got your A players, your B players, and your C players, right? You just over communicate with your A players. And I did work for Jack Welch for a couple of years, or for a couple of months, by the way. That was fun. That dude's a riot, by the way, or he was. I rest in peace. But you over communicate and you let them set those goals for the A's. The B's, you kind of a little more short, midterm, long term, and you work together. And the C's, you do micro goals. Like today, can you make 10 cold calls? Today, can you do this? And then you you coach your B's to be A's. So when that A player does leave, you got somebody to back them up. Like you just do, and I do think that if you do all those right things as a leadership team and you have a good product, you have good market fit, and there is, there'll be challenges along the way, and you got an A player that then bounces, you need to reflect internally of why that happens, or you just need to look at that person and say, you know what, they were a flight risk from day one, and I should have known it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That resonates well. I've heard, I think, Jack a couple times talk about A, B, and C players.
Well, people take it a little bit too much. Like they think he was a little bit too draconian, where he's always shaving off the lowest 20%. That's not the case. Like he never said that you always have to fire your lowest 20%. That's a framework to think about, and you should be coaching in that. But there's always 2 or 3 people that you should be shaving off, because if you keep those C players and they continue to be C players and you focus all your energy and effort on them, then what happens is your A and your B players say, oh, wait a minute. So in order for me to get attention from management, I got to suck. Okay. So they actually drag you down, and the C is more of the magnet than the A's are.
Yeah.
Right? You'd think that B players would go towards A's. No. Because guess what? Let's go back to Glenn Ross. If you remember Al Pacino, right? He was almost never in the office. So whenever some bad thing say I'm changing the commission plan as a leader, right? And I change the commission, but nobody likes it. Well, the A player goes out and it's like, okay, that sucks. But they look at it and they figure out where are the gaps here and how can I maximize my commission, right?
Yeah.
The B player is sitting there going, well, that sucks. And the C player is sitting there saying that really sucks. And the C player is going to the B player and going, hey, you want to go grab some coffee and talk about how much this sucks? So all of a sudden, the B player starts to get sucked into the C player mentality, because the A player is off saying, okay, that's your problem, not mine. I got to go figure out how to maximize this. So that's why you have to have a bench for your A's.
Oh, amen.
Man. So, that hit your heart, Jack? That sounds like it hits home for you.
Amen.
So my question is more, instead of like the top performers, what about your brand new sales rep? So a lot of times we're hiring people right out of school, maybe a year or two of experience. What would be your advice to some of the new people who have never been in sales?
Talk to other sales professionals about why, talk to people who have been in their careers for a while about why they've been in their careers for a while. Because back to Jack's point a little bit earlier about like some people aren't really suited for sales. And so if you talk to, and LinkedIn's a perfect place to do that, right? To go on and just find other people who have been in the profession for a while, ideally in your industry, and just talk to them about what their journeys look like so that they can say, okay, I could see myself in that, right? Or mentorship or whatever you want to do internally as an organization. I think mentorship's a little bit of a tricky thing. I love mentorship programs, but the problem is if you tie one rep to one mentor, and this mentor is not exactly perceived well within the organization, all of a sudden you're tying this kid's legs. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden this kid's got the reputation of this person. So I don't think there should be one mentor. I think they should mentor in certain areas. So certain people are great at, prospecting. Certain people are great at relationship development. Certain people are great at that. So have those people work with these individuals and show them what it's like. But I think a lot of it, the number one recommendation I would have for sales reps and companies is don't think about the product knowledge or anything. You don't have to be the industry expert to be good at sales. You have to know enough to be able to bring in the pieces, but you should really focus on business acumen. Like how to have a business conversation, how do businesses run, what do CEOs do, what do CFOs do? I mean, the fact that most people have no clue what the different, and I'm talking technical sales reps who sell technical solutions to technical people. Most of them don't even know the difference between a CTO and a CIO.
Yep.
That to me is a shame. Yeah. If I could go back and tell my 22-year-old self something, what would it be, right? My number one thing would be A/B split test everything you do. So literally A/B split test everything you do. If you say you're calling into CFOs in the financial services, come up with 2 different messages that speak to CFOs and financial services. Make 20 phone calls with this approach, make 20 phone calls with that approach. See which one yields a higher response rate, right? Objection handling. Write down an objection that you're getting smoked on. And Google best objection handling techniques, whatever. Go find a couple that you like. And the next 10 times that objection comes up, deal with it this way. The next 10 times, deal with it that way. See which one you right. And then, so split test, and then really be proactive with your business acumen. Read books that CEOs book, listen to podcasts of executives and what their challenges are and that type of stuff. So you can have interesting conversations, because the number one skill that rep could, not number one, I think top skill that a rep can have to be successful is genuine curiosity. I want to be curious about this, right?
I think so. It's so weird. Type A sales folks, I said, the answers are out there. Like, with this, we have this thing, we got to be on an island. I can't ask anybody. And it's, I think, especially in companies, there's somebody already killing it. Go spend time with the person killing it. Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel here.
But also, I used to have reps. I don't understand why most companies don't, manage leverage their own resources. Because I used to have reps that come into my office and be like, John, I'm having a really hard time, getting through gatekeepers, man. Any suggestions on getting through gatekeepers? I'd be like, hold on a second. Hey, Shelly.
Yeah, go talk to Billy.
Yeah, I'm like, Shelly, are you a gatekeeper? Yeah, John. Shelly, do you take calls from sales reps all day long and let some through and some not? Yes, John. Would you mind talking to one of my reps about how to get through gatekeepers? Sure, John, no problem. Hey, John, I'm having a really hard time talking to CFOs. Hey, Calvin, are you a CFO? Yeah. Go fucking talk to Calvin. Like, I don't know what it's like to be a CFO. Go talk to our CFO about it. Like,
So two last things. We have just a few minutes. So one, you mentioned it. I know you put a book out, right? A kid's book, right? Yeah. When I want to be in sales when I grow up. Love that. And I know you also have the 12 guiding principles to success in life, business, and sales. So I'd love to, if you want to run on either one of those, both were great when, we see you and what you put out there. And so maybe you could touch on both those endeavors. What made you write the book? And then the 12 principles.
So the book, that was me. Before COVID hit, I was traveling all over the world. I was 6,000 miles away from the 1 million mile mark on just United alone when everything shut down. So I was gone every week, and my daughter's 10 years old now. So I was missing everything. And I wanted to find a way to get her a little bit more involved in what I did and understand a little bit more. Because, kid knows what lawyers look like, doctors. But when you tell your kid you're in sales, they kind of look at you like, what is that? You talk to people all day long, Daddy? Well. So with me trying to, and also kind of going back to, I forget who brought it up, but my why, right? my why is sales done right, right? Trying to elevate the profession of sales, because I genuinely believe when sales is done right, it's the greatest profession in the world. When done wrong, it's the worst. And unfortunately, no kid ever says, I want to be in sales when I grow up. It's always the default profession.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's why we're in such a bad loop here, is because you give a kid who went to college, who now has college, loans to pay back, and then they get into sales and you give them a quota in a territory. You take a normal kid who usually wouldn't lie, cheat, or steal, and now you tell them that if you don't hit your quota, you're gonna be fired, or you're not gonna be able to make commissions and pay your bills. They'll do some shady stuff. And so that it's the self-fulfilling prophecy as far as the perception of sales reps. So I thought, I've always wanted a certificate program for colleges, right? But I don't have time to do that. So I decided to go way back and try to, at the root, try to introduce sales to kids in a really healthy way. And my daughter was, she was selling Girl Scout cookies. And so she came to me and she said, Daddy, you got a really, and this was when she was like 5 years old. She's like, you got a really strong, social media following. I got the link where people can buy cookies from me. And I'm like, first of all, you shouldn't know about my Second of all, how do you okay. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, well, why not? I was like, because A, that's my audience. And B, why should they buy from you over anybody else, every other kid who's selling them Girl Scout cookies? So she's like, what do I have to do? So we went on a little, journey of like teaching her pitch. So she had to come up with a pitch, and I recorded that. And then the next year she was going door to door. So we talked about objection handling, and on that website, you'll see the journey, you'll see the videos of it. And I always, people are always asking me, John, when are you going to write your book? I told you, a state school kid. I probably read 5 books in my life. I'd feel like a little bit of a hypocrite writing a book. And so, and what the hell am I going to write that anybody that hasn't already been written a million times before? So I decided to write a children's book. And so my daughter and I wrote it together. 100% of the profits go to charity. She actually doesn't want to be in sales when she grows up. She actually wants to be a veterinarian. So all the profits, they all go to the World Wildlife Fund. And we were able to, over the past 2 years, give $25,000 to the World Wildlife Fund, which has been really, really rewarding. Thanks. So there's that. And then the 12 guidelines, that was something I got from Think and Grow Rich. So Napoleon Hill, he talks about knowing your values. Early on in my career, I defined my 12 guiding principles, and those guide almost everything I do. I'm actually doing a whole series right now on Instagram with those. So I'm picking each one of them and going day by day and talking through each one and what they mean to me. But yeah, it's all about just trying to get better. People say work hard and work smart. I say, the secret to success isn't sexy. It's working your ass off. So you have to work hard and smart, and then it kind of goes through the rest of these. But this is how the lens that I put on decisions that I make, how I react to things. And so I share this with my team to let them know, look, when you get a reaction from me, this is where it comes from. Okay. And so just as long as you understand, you don't have to have these core values. You don't have to have these same values as I do, but just know that when I give you feedback, this is where it's coming from. And it's been a pretty healthy tool for me to kind of keep my guidelines and my why and all that stuff together.
That's so awesome. Look, we say really quick, when we hire people, the only difference between a person makes X and 2X is that hustle piece, right? It's like, 100%. The questions, it's like, there's nothing about the hustle. Listen, we're running out of time. How do folks reach you? Tell them all the stuff you're doing. You got a lot of things out there. Yeah,
we got a million things going on. So LinkedIn's the biggest, my biggest following right there. You hit me up, I answer questions. The one I get the most, the one I'm doing the most engagement as far as one-on-one coaching and consulting is actually Instagram. So IG, it's John M as in Michael Barrows. That's my handle. You can go check it out there. And then we have a whole new on-demand platform that has all of our stuff in video. We created kind of a Netflix for sales, kind of a sales masterclass there, and we're putting it out there, and we got a lot of traction on that. And there's not just my content, but all curated, really, really high quality content in a really, specific format for people to digest easily. So those are the areas you can check us out, website, all that stuff. But just trying to do my part to elevate the profession here, one tip at a time, if you will.
That's awesome. Bro, thank you so much. That was awesome. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Love what you're doing in the world of sales. Bring us up out of the gutter. They say, just above politicians. So let's
right. It's like politicians, lawyers, sales. Right? Let's try to get us up there.
Amen. Thank you so much. Be safe. Stay safe.
Thanks for having me on here, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes. Hey, that was an amazingly super fast hour. Love.
We have like 10 more questions.
I know. I was trying to borrow. He has hundreds of thousands of followers online. Amazing what he does, and ton of resources. Couldn't be better. And in the mix, I don't know if you guys have any parting thoughts about what you heard.
Wow. A lot of it at home, like it's just good because you hear so much stuff throughout your career. And then when you hear like another person, like, John say it, it just reinforces it. So I just love that, he speaks the truth. You could tell he's not bullshitting or, he's just delivering right from his heart. And that's one of the things that come across. And that's a good characteristic to a good salesperson. And what he's trying to do for the industry is very admirable. And it's being truthful and honest, not the whatever you said, the boiler room guys that are making up stuff, because that's crap and that's not sales. But people see that in the media, and I love that he's just trying to change that stigma.
Amen, amen. Dre.
No, that was good. I feel bad if you heard me typing. I didn't have a notepad, but I was like typing everything he was saying.
I'm taking notes. Yep.
But yeah, no, I think it was good. I think a lot of our team was watching, but I'd like to share a lot of the little tips because a lot of it is stuff we've heard, right? Like a couple little things, but then when you hear it so direct and so blunt, like don't say that or 100% do this, like it just kind of clicks a little more. So
amen, amen. Listen, we're out of here. We'll see you next week. Back in Florida. Be safe out there. God bless. Thank you, John Barrows. Great hour. Be good. Amen.
We're out.
Come to our webinar.